If you follow this channel, then you may have noticed a couple of months ago I did an unboxing video for this FEELWORLD S7 monitor. Now, over those intervening months, I've been using it on a number of different projects, and I'm ready to give you my honest opinion. I'm not going to try and make this a very long, exhaustive review because in that unboxing video, I did list out a lot of the features and that kind of thing. But in principle, it is a 7-inch monitor. It is designed probably primarily to be on camera, although you could use it off camera, you know, as a director's monitor or in any of the other scenarios you can imagine, focus pulling, that kind of thing, maybe something for client. But primarily, I've been using it as an on-camera monitor, and mostly it has lived on the PYXIS. In fact, I would go as far as to say I pretty much haven't really taken it off, and I've been using it more and more versus using the EVF. Now, the types of shoot do make a difference to how I will actually build out a camera. So for example, in one of the very early PYXIS videos I put out, I was primarily using the EVF, and that was one, through necessity, just through rigging and what I had available, and two, I actually was operating in really bright sunny environments, and I was mostly handheld, and it was mostly just me having to operate and look at the camera. Now, if you're doing something else like interviews and you're trying to keep an eye line with a subject and talk to them, and occasionally you just want to check over stuff on the monitor, then actually having a top monitor like this does make more sense than the EVF perhaps. Now, the PYXIS obviously is a weird case because you do have the side screen, so potentially you can use that, and I have used that on shoots, but I do prefer generally operating with the monitor on top like this. Now, I haven't just used it with the PYXIS, but when I do, it is coming out of the SDI port just here, and that gives me a 4K SDI signal from PYXIS to the monitor. Now, the monitor itself, then I will often daisy chain an SDI out into one of my Axon transmitters, and that will allow me to broadcast out to an iPad or the Axon receiver. That is one of the really nice features actually of this monitor. It features SDI in and SDI out, it's very well catered for, and it also gives you the option of cross conversion. So if you are taking an SDI signal in, you can output an HDMI signal. Vice versa, if you take an HDMI signal in, you can put an SDI signal out. That's really handy when you're trying to pair different bits of equipment, and it's nice that you don't have to get an extra box to do it or upgrade a different bit of equipment to be able to use it with your new monitor, for example. Now, I'm no stranger to monitors very much like this. I have in the past used a lot of small HD monitors, and for a long time I was running a 707 Bright, I think it was, and that lived sort of on top of a big Ronin 2 rig, and I did tons of shoots with that. It was a really good monitor. Primarily, the reason it was so great was it was daylight viewable, and it was a bit of a workhorse, it was rugged. It didn't actually have as many features and functions as this monitor now does, so it didn't have all the cross conversion stuff and all of the other goodness that we actually see on this particular monitor. We also, on this monitor, have the option of multiple ways of powering it. So at the moment, it is set up with the included MPF plate on the back, and that is really how I've been using it. But you can also take DC into it, or you could get a different plate for the back, because that MPF plate is interchangeable, and switch it on for a V-mount or a gold mount or whatever other flavor of battery plate you can manage to get onto the back of it. Now, that does make it a little bit more versatile. It means that you can tailor it to your particular shooting requirements and also your particular battery requirements, because everyone is in a different system, and it's frustrating when you have to get an adapter or some kind of other battery to power something which kind of steps outside of your ecosystem. So it's nice that this is a little bit more flexible in that respect. Now, I mentioned the small HD that I've been using previously was really bright and daylight viewable. This is actually also really bright and daylight viewable. On the packet, it is one of the things they state right off the bat, it is 1600 nits. Now, that is not the absolute brightest monitor that you can find, but it is plenty. And in fact, most of the time when I'm shooting indoors, I have the brightness dialed right down. One, because I don't need it to be that bright. Two, because actually it starts to use a little bit more battery life. And I would say that that is perhaps one of my only critiques of this monitor, is that it's actually relatively power hungry. Now, I wouldn't go as far as to say it's gluttonous in its battery consumption, but it certainly does chew through batteries a little bit quicker than a lot of the other pieces of equipment that I'm using alongside it. So you do have to keep an eye, and personally, actually, I only use the smaller MPF batteries because they are lighter weight, and I would most of the time rather have multiple lighter weight batteries like that and keep the overall bulk mass of my rig down a little bit, rather than put something on which maybe would last a whole day but ultimately would stick out, you know, a couple of inches and add an extra load of weight to the top of my camera and make it unbalanced. So that is kind of the way that I choose to use it. Now, I could potentially also use it with a D-tap out of this or a DC out of this V-mount on the back and put that directly into the monitor. Now, I choose not to do that because I would actually rather keep my camera batteries working for camera and know how much runtime I'm going to get from that rather than deplete them and then run out of camera battery. So putting the MPFs on the back and wrangling those, I've got enough that it'll work, so that's how I choose to use it. Now, going back to monitors that I've used in the past, build quality is a concern, and FEELWORLD is a brand which I've had experience of in the past when I was using the small HD monitors, and at that point, a long time ago now, must be said, the FEELWORLD monitor was very much the budget option. And to some extent, it is still true today. This is far less expensive than the small HD 707, if that's what it was, Bright, that I got way back, you know, like almost 10 years ago probably. That monitor was incredibly expensive. It was, I think it was about £1,500–1,600 at that point in time. This monitor is in the £600 to £700 range. So it is far less expensive, but I don't think anymore that I feel like this is a budget option. In the past, when I've used FEELWORLD monitors, and I still actually have a very old one, which definitely does feel a little bit less rugged than this does, I've kind of babied them, but this, it feels really solid. And I would go as far as to say, having used it for maybe 3 months now, that this is actually in the same ballpark as that small HD monitor. It's encased in that aluminium frame. It's got cooling vents and it's got fans built in, so it's going to kind of take care of its own electronics and its own heat. And it's incredibly well catered for in terms of I/O. And we also have other options that I probably won't use, but you know, there's a tally input, so a little tally light just there if you're using some kind of multi-camera setup and you're live streaming or something like that. There's a tally input and you can then see, you know, if you're live or if you've been previewed. All of that goodness is included in this. It's a minor point, it's not something I expect to use, but it is there, and if you want it, that is incredibly useful. Now, the monitor itself does have a lot of tools built in, and I would say that these days, this level of software integration with tools is expected. Certainly when you're paying over £200–300, I feel like you're going to expect some histograms, waveforms, false colors, focus peaking, all of that kind of stuff built into the monitor. And I'm happy to report that is all here. Gives you a good number of different options for how you want those displayed, and you can tailor it to your particular preferences, you know, in terms of like what color focus peaking you prefer, what level you want it at, and all the rest of it. Now, you can also put on guides, whether that's frame guides or actually having like thirds and that kind of thing. That's all in there as well. Navigating all of these menus is an absolute breeze. You know, you can double tap to bring up the menu on this, and then from there you've got a touchscreen, so you can just touch your way through. You also have the scroll wheel on top, which is really quick, really easy, really responsive. So you can just select things, click on them with that, but you can always just tap on the screen and tap out of the menu if you want. There's no having to scroll back and go through tons of things to get out of a menu. It's really quick and really easy. I think the only critique that I have, apart from power consumption being a little bit higher than I would ideally like, is that for changing the brightness of the screen, I often end up changing the volume. So this does have volume as a control, but yeah, you're able to swipe one way or the other way, sideways or up and down. And I always tend to bring volume up rather than the backlight up. And I would say that in the majority of the time, I don't want the volume at all. So that can just go away. And then the backlight is something which I would more likely be changing. So I would say that that is perhaps a critique. It's probably a firmware thing that could be updated. So if that could be updated, that would be great, because I think that adding the more responsive touch for the backlight is probably the better place to have it. Now, at the moment, I've got it mounted onto my PYXIS with this DF photo monitor mount. I like this one. It is solid, keeps the monitor where you put it, but has enough friction in it to allow it to not be completely locked and for you to still be able to adjust it, which is nice. And you can also then twist the monitor on that as well, so you can actually turn it a little bit, but I've got the top handle on, so I tend not to be doing that. Now the actual mounting points that you have around it are also very well appointed. You've got 1/4-20s on the bottom and either side. You've got nothing on top, but it's rare that you would actually need or want that. And the 1/4-20s do have ARRI locating pins as well, so if you are using it, say on something like this, you can rely on those locating pins to keep the monitor in place. And you know, it's always frustrating when you're adjusting something and it kind of spins loose or twists around, so it's nice that that is all included. Now I suspect one of the things that people are going to talk about in the comments, given that I've got this mounted on PYXIS, is would I be using this if I had the PYXIS monitor? And that is a tricky question to answer absolutely, because at the moment I do not have a PYXIS monitor. I do want to test out the PYXIS monitor, and I think that in a lot of ways I would probably end up using the PYXIS monitor over an external monitor like this. Having said that, this as a piece of equipment is far, far more flexible than the PYXIS monitor ever can be, because you can use this with basically any camera you want. So I've been using this with the PYXIS. I do also use it with my Canon C70. I can use it on any Sony I want. I could put it on an ARRI Alexa Mini. I could put it on a Red. It doesn't really matter. It will work with those because it has SDI and HDMI and will take all flavors of that. Now with the proprietary Blackmagic monitor, I'm pretty much going to be tied to the PYXIS and perhaps other Blackmagic cameras that come out that support it, you know, 12K, all of that. That does mean if you're getting into, say, the PYXIS ecosystem and you're looking for the most absolute streamlined pared down setup, well, the PYXIS monitor is one cable in, it does all the powering, it does all the signal, and it integrates perfectly with Blackmagic cameras to give you control and all of that. So it does things that other monitors just will not do. For me, personally, I'm definitely going to keep hold of the S7. It is going to be living on my PYXIS for a while to come, at least until I start testing out the Blackmagic monitor. But even when I've done that, it's probably still going to find a home with my Canon C70 and potentially, you know, also actually on the PYXIS, because of all of the reasons that I just stated. There are things that this does that the PYXIS monitor won't, and it's slightly bigger as well. So that has been my review of the FEELWORLD S7. I do thoroughly recommend it. I think it is an excellent choice. I think the price point is very attractive. FEELWORLD sent it out to me to review, but they haven't pressured me to say good things about it. They've been very chill, and they basically just want the honest opinion and my take on it. And I hope I've given that to you. If you do have any questions, drop them into the comments and I'm happy to answer them.